We come to the flag end of today's exercise. We have one important activity or job to do. This session is primarily focused at release of a book which is in the memory of Dr. C.S. Venkatratnam. Many of you may have met him. He was the founder secretary of Indian Industrial Relations Association and also professor at the International Management Institute, a very close colleague and a friend and co-worker of mine. So this session we will devote to him, and to do this honor we have few dignitaries who have closely associated with late Dr. C.S. Venkatratnam and who will join us in speaking about him, his contribution, his relation with individuals, and what we did in the course of our interaction with each other. May I invite to start with Mr. Mahendra Sharma, former Regional Secretary of ITF. May I invite Professor M. Mamkutam, formerly of Faculty of Management Study of Delhi University. May I also invite Professor Sodhi, and I will invite him in a different category as a member of All India Organization of Employers. He was there also. I'm also there, so don't worry about that one. And of course, the most honorable guest, Mr. Dr. L.D. Mishra, who is not only reverend to him, but also to all of us. We respect you, sir. Please do come. Please do come as chief guest. And of course, Professor Shyam Sundar, who has edited one book, which all of us are yet to see. Only one person has seen that book, that is Dr. L.D. Mishra. And I took advantage of sitting next to him and just peeped into him. Please. Please, आइए. As I said that this function is primarily focused at honoring the contribution of Professor C.S. Venkatratnam. My association with him started as early as I think 92, 93. And it was a strange meeting when we met first. Strange in the sense that at that time, I used to perceive him as a representative employer, and you always have a kind of assumed notion about how employer behaves. And I had just come out of the government system and joined FES. and joined more as an activist because, of course, in the ministry I was dealing with labor, but when I joined FES, my association was more with trade union. And as such, the meeting was more of a meeting of two different interest groups. But in the course of first meeting itself, I think maybe he also felt and I also felt that we are not as activist as public perceived to be. I was all right from labor, but not as what to firebrand as a trade unionist would be. And he also was from the employer, but not as strong, but more of an academician. And that's how our relationship started. We had the first topic of our mutual working together was, of course, globalization. We looked globalization from different angle. He from the employer side, I from the trade union or worker side. And that was as early as 93, which when the period was very vibrant insofar globalization is concerned. There were clear two different groups, one supporting globalization, other opposing. And trade union was, of course, strongly in opposition of globalization. And there was strong, at that time, feeling that we should go back to the planned system of governance. Within 2 years of our association, we established this Indian Industrial Relations Association. And if I rightly remember, the primary objective was to find a meeting point of the two interest group with the support from the government to see that whether globalization could be seen from a positive angle, whether it has more positive things to do than negative. Of course, this evening's debate, this morning debates brings out other points also, but I'm talking about 1993 to 1995 period. And that's how we established Indian Industrial Relations Association, and we had long support base from trade union, from employer, from academia to become party to this body. And one principle we always follow, and we are still following, that no single interest will dominate IIRA. In the membership, in the management, there was always a kind of balance created. There was a kind of unwritten rule that we will see that neither the employer dominates in the membership nor the trade union, of course not the government. Government was always perceived to be a supporting party, and as such, it was basically balancing factor between the employer and the employee. And in 1997, we jointly held the first Asia Regional Conference of ILERA. On those days, it should be known to as International Industrial Relations Association. We had the massive function in Delhi with elephant moving around, and our guest was so pleased to see. All credit goes to, of course, Dr. Venkatratnam. The other angle was him as a professor of International Management Institute. And also subsequently director of the institute, where Professor Sodhi was also there. Shyam Sundar, not there as an employee, but as a member and also as a beneficiary of his vast knowledge with regard to IR. One sentence I always remember with regard to Venkatratnam is that he said that, he used to say that nothing is permanent. Only one thing is permanent, and that is change. We live in a period of change, and everything is in a transition. The subject, the issues, the human being. And that thing has always remained with many of us who associated with each other. The last meeting I think we sat on a joint panel was on the panel of governance. and it was organized by, I think, Asia Productivity Council somewhere in Delhi. That was the last time we met each other, and 2 days later on, he expired in in a in a hospital. And I think he collapsed in the office itself, and then he died. We had invited his wife, uh, V. Chanda, a professor at the International Management Institute, also to be with us, and she has agreed also. But unfortunately, a couple of days back, Venkat's mother died in Hyderabad. So she has to flew down there, and she said that I apologize for not being able to be present there. But of course, he said that Venkat must be looking from upstairs, and she will be looking from Hyderabad, and thanking all of you for being present here to honor the memory of her husband, late Dr. C.S. Venkatratnam. Before we formally go on the release of the book, may I request to start with Professor Mamkutam to say a few words with regard to Dr. Venkatratnam.
Thank you, Prami. It's never easy, at least not for me, to speak about a person you knew well and who's not anymore with you. Perhaps I don't remember the year. I knew Venkat almost a couple of months after he shipped to Delhi. We met in one of the in-company programs, and he was one of the speakers and I was subsequent to that. So we introduced each other, and to be very honest, I had not heard of him till then, but he knew about me, so we chatted and we exchanged each other's contact numbers and we kept in touch, and the rest is all history. Venkat is among the people I have come across who found no obstacle for himself. Whatever he decided, I think he would somehow manage to do. And I was overwhelmed always by the energy he had. Enormous energy, extraordinary organizational skills. His ability to put things together is remarkable to my mind. The other colleague with whom Venkat and I worked together is Professor C.P. Thakur. Three of us worked on several things together. As Praveen mentioned, the formation of the Industrial Relations Association, Professor Thakur and Venkat together initiated. And he had the capacity to carry enormous responsibilities with ease. I do not claim that I knew him that closely, but professionally, yes. And I was always impressed by his tenacity, by his relentless effort to achieve things, whatever he would have set for himself. A good human being, generous, and somebody who was able to be an academic as well as interface with external world, particularly the government and so on. I mean, I've spent all my life in academics. It's not easy, but Venkat had that skill, that capability. And labor being my specialized field, I am not aware of any committee where Venkat was not a member as far as labor is concerned. I also wish to thank Sham for putting these papers together and bringing out this book in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one incident that I want to share with you. This happened some years back. We were in Visakhapatnam in connection with some, I think, IIRA program only. And in the evening, Venkat said that, look, you are in my city. Can we do something? I said, why not? We are in your city, why not? He said, let's go to movie. I said, okay. Debashi is also there. And then he comes, I said, okay, I got the tickets, let's go. So we went to one, in those days there used to be single screen theaters, PVR, these were not there. You didn't have multiplexes. So it was one, and this is in Visakhapatnam, so it's not Delhi, it's not good, Manilyam city, Gurgaon. It was Visakhapatnam, one small theater. And we went there and we were taken by this, the seat man, right in the front of the theater. It was front row with huge screen in front of you. And we sat there for 3 hours, Venkat sitting with me. Venkat, who is known as very sober, very bada serious aadmi, very serious man. Sitting with me for 3 hours laughing. I said, what are you doing here? The whole screen is on us. He said, enjoy, this is Visakhapatnam. That is Dr. Venkat Ratnam. Mahendra Sharma, can you say something?
Thank you, Praveen, Dr. Mishra, ladies and gentlemen, friends. Well, I first came into contact with Dr. C.S. Venkatratnam was way back in 1982. I had organized a program on behalf of HMS. We were running a project, ICFTU HMS project on employment promotion, and many of you might have heard there was a guy by the name of Bo Johnson from ICFTU, Swedish guy who was there. So, and it was organized at the Visakhapatnam Port Employees Union. And day before the program was to start, I had gone to the union office to meet the General Secretary of the union, B. Dharma Rao. And there he was not doctor at that time, Venkatratnam was there. And I was introduced to him, and then he was, I think this was part of his PhD studies which he was doing, and he used to come to the union office because he was doing industrial relations in the port industry and the industrial relations in the port of Visakhapatnam. So he used to spend a lot of time at the Visakhapatnam Port Employees Union. And when we organized this seminar for 3 days, he was there full time with us and all this. And subsequently he moved to ASCI, Administrative Staff College in Hyderabad. And so we maintained contact, and then he came to Delhi and all that. And when this IRA was established in the beginning, I had some association because Professor Thakur was also there. And but then gradually it was a time when I changed my job, and I moved to the ITF, International Transport Workers Federation, and then I had to undertake a lot of travel in the Asia Pacific region. So our contact was less, but from time to time when he was director of the International Management Institute, he invited me a few times to talk to the students about the transport industry, the impact of globalization, because transport industry is the one industry which is by nature a global industry, particularly with reference to shipping, civil aviation, and all this. So we maintained that contact. When I came to know that he had passed away, it was I was really shocked, because this was not the age for a person to go. But the work which he had done, and I always used to call him, I said, you work for a management institute, but you have been a friend of trade unions. He maintained such close contact with the trade unions in whatever position he was, even when he was at the ASCI, Administrative Staff College of India, whenever we invited him. And I'm talking about a smaller level union, not the national level, not the national center inviting him. A small union will invite him, he will come there and speak to the participants, speak to the leadership. He was always available to give them advice and other thing and all that. And when this economic liberalization started, and this was the time, I think, when he was very active in the early 90s and all this, interacting with the trade unions and all that. And then also trying to find, he used to always say, let's find a way out. How do we meet? Strikes is not the solution. Agitation is not the only solution. But you can do it as building pressure. But I think we need to find a common ground with the employers, with the government and all this. So I think I'm very happy that a book is released in his memory. And we will always remember Dr. Venkat Ratnam as a friend of trade unions, because I come from the trade unions and all this. And he was a very, simple, noble human being and all that. So I would like to record my appreciation to the people who have done, Professor Shyam Sundar and others, who have taken the initiative, who have devoted a lot of time to bring this, and I think it will be, it's a befitting thing in the memory of Dr. Venkat Ratnam. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Sodhi, before he became director of the Shri Ram Center, he was at International Management Institute. Apart from being a teacher there, he was also a dean to the institute and have well, it's a question of perception. Okay, may I invite Professor Sodhi, please. See, Srivastava ji said it's not the question of designation, it's the question of what job you do.
Number one, I didn't know that I'm going to speak at this session. And number two, when he said that you're going to speak, and I was sitting here for 10 minutes, I think so many thoughts, so many memories are coming back of, Venkat Ratnam in particular, and the association which we had or we did not have, with Venkat Ratnam. It's sad that he passed away and not at a time when he should have. And it's sad for the community, not national community I'm saying, also for the international community on IRHR, that such a stalwart, couldn't complete the life due to whatever God-known reasons. I met Venkat in 1989. I was a professor at Shri Ram Center for Industrial Relations, and we had a chair professor called Dr. Baldev Sharma. And some of the oldies probably would know. He was a doyen. He and Ishwar Dayal taught in Ahmedabad during the 60s. So those were the days. He was the chair professor, and Professor Venkat Ratnam and Dr. Sharma were doing a project, and Dr. Sharma used to sit just in front of my room. So whenever Venkat would come, okay, Sodhi come, Venkat has come. And they will discuss, and sometimes we'll talk about personal things. but Venkat would hardly speak. He was, the point which I'm trying to make is that he was a very shy person, very introvert kind of a person. And this is what I remembered of him. And after that, I did not have any direct professional or personal contact with him until 1992, when both of us landed in Sydney for the International Industrial Relations Conference. There we had a chance to interact, and I could still see the shy man sitting in a corner and discussing things, not really mixing up with a lot of people, not really mixing up with a lot of people. And that's my impression about him of the beginning years when I met him. I met him over the years, and we did not again do any work together, except that as an aftermath of the IARA in Sydney, Professor Thomas Cochrane, I think if you remember, he is the MIT and he's one of the stalwarts. After John Dunlop in US, it's the Cochrane, which is well known on IRHR, particularly the HR matters in the US, was the president of the International Industrial Association, and the two of us got together to invite him to India. I don't remember the year, must be 93, 94. And that is where we again started interacting with each other. And when he came, we had some joint meetings. He came to Shri Ram Center, he went to International Management Institute. And I remember in a conference in one of the hotels, the announcement of the Indian Industrial Relations Association was made. In one of the hotels, Professor Thakur was also taking the lead, in IARA and otherwise. And that's how probably the Indian Industrial Relations Association was also born. And immediately aftermath of that, we landed up with the two of us together, landed up a project, an MIT-led project, financed and led project. And the meeting was held in Singapore, where representatives from different countries on IRHR represented themselves, and we did a project together. That project which we got together, we did it separately. Because I was in the Shri Ram Center, he was in IMI, and somehow, we went in different directions. But at the end of it, of course, we collaborated together and submitted a huge project on IRHR in India. I joined IMI in 1994, International Management Institute, as a professor HR. He was already there. And by that time, he was coming out of his shell. And during the 7 years I spent in International Management Institute, I think his transformation had already taken place. He was personally a shy person, but professionally a very active, extrovert kind of a person. And he did very serious research. I was also the program director for 1 or 2 years, I remember. And on the one hand, there used to be complaint that Professor Venkat is not available for classes because he spread himself, by 1998, 99, 2000, too much. And that goes to his credit, whether it is the government of India, anything on labor and industrial relations, he's there. It's industrial, it's trade unions, anything to do with labor and industrial relations, he was there. Management institutes I'm talking about. Anybody wanting to have a special lecture on IRHR, he was there. Employers Association, anybody wanting any input, any specialist input on IRHR, he will be there. And of course, lots of seminars and the national conventions. And add to that, the international conventions. By that time, he had become a very important member of the International Industrial Relations Association. So, they used to travel quite a lot. In 2000, 2001, 98, 99, he would travel for almost 20 days in a month, 25 days in a month within India and outside India. And as I said that, sometimes students used to complain, or administration of the institute used to complain that, he's not having his classes. But he would hold his classes on Monday morning, Sunday morning. And students would come and love his lecture. That was the kind of wings which God spread of a man who was so shy. That was the kind of an acceptance which he received from every community you can think of. He was moving so fast, and I was also there, and I always felt jealous of him. It's a fact. I have never admitted it to anybody in my life, but I felt jealous of him. Yeah? What is he doing which I am not doing? Why is it that I am not there? I was there somewhere, but in his shadow. And quite a lot of times I would get assignments which Venkat is not able to complete. I used to feel bad about that also. I used to get national and international assignments, but I used to feel bad about it. And lo and behold, this continued even after his death. Bruce Kaufman, I think those of us who are from the academics or practicing world, Bruce Kaufman is an international authority on industrial relations. Okay? He was writing a book on international HRM. And it had chapters from about 27 countries. And he had asked Venkat to contribute a paper in India. He died, and then Bruce Kaufman came to me and said, Sodhi, this is what has happened. And, can you help me? Can you write a chapter on India? So what I'm trying to say is not personal between me and him, but he was always ahead of all of us. And I used to wonder what kind of an energy this man has. How is he traveling? And he would eat, rice and pulses, rice and dal is what we say. वो दाल चावल खाता था सिर्फ. Sambar, dal chawal. You see him eating, anywhere. We used to eat together in IMI canteen. We used to eat together in a large number of conferences where I was also there. I was there with him, and I was, otherwise also, together with him in a large number of places. You see the lunch which he would take, you see the dinner which he would take. My God, frugal. The most frugal lunch. He never had any drinks in his life. Here is the man. To me, he was the most remarkable man, not only for what he did achieve professionally, but also the transformation which took place in him from being a reclusive, from being a complete introvert to an extrovert. Hats off to Professor Venkat. I miss you and wish you well. Thank you.
Few statements on from the side of Indian Industrial Relations Association. After his demise, I took over as the secretary of the Indian Industrial Relations Association. And my engagement with the international body also became deeper, although I was not as jealous as Professor Sodhi, because I knew my limitations. Yeah, Professor Venkat had one word which was many of us don't have. He never said no to anything, irrespective of who invites, irrespective of where one has to go. Because many a time when we are in a midst of some discussion, he would say that, okay, I have to go to Greater Noida or Noida. I said, what is there? He said, one group has called me. He said, all the way to that place? He said, yeah, they're expecting me. So one, like you said, we never said no to anybody. And I think that was indicative of his commitment to the subject and willingness to share the knowledge that he had. And that really impacted the growth of the institution, that C.P. Thakur and Venkat started, that he was perpetually striving to strengthen the capacity of this newly developed baby. And wherever he went, in fact, he made sure that he used to come back with a couple of new members. And as such, the institution grew member-wise. Academically, I think he was initiator to many of the academic projects that we at IIRA concluded. Many of the books that came out on the subject went into his credit. Internationally also, IIRA was one of the active and continues to be one of the active member of the international body, where India's chapter is considered to be a major contributor to the think tank of the 7 subjects groups that is there, whether it is from the trade union side, employment relations side, law side, and other groups. IRA, thanks to Venkat, also had a very close relation and continues to be with the University of Toronto, with Anil Verma as a co-partner. And together we brought out, I think, 3 books that went with Anil Verma's association, and the last one, which Shyam Sundar contributed. The book is still there. Ulaya, Flappers, the book. Maybe you can distribute. Not the book, the page. Yeah, that can be distributed. So yes, in the growth of IIRA, he made a major contribution, and many of us were surprised how he was doing the triple job, being a professor at the IRA. Now I know he was not taking his classes at the time. On Sunday and Monday, yes. But he was tripling the work at as a professor, the work as the director of the institute, which was no less work, and of course as the secretary of IIRA, together with whatever trade union or employment relation works that we were collectively doing for ILO also. And now I see the pain when I've taken his seat. I see the pain, which I don't know whether he was feeling or not. Doing double or triple job is not that easy. It makes not only hair white, but also sometimes mind white also. So you get confused which seat you are in. Dr. L.D. Mishra is a former labor secretary. He is also one of the former rapporteur of the National Human Rights Commission, and he has made major contribution to the understanding of the child labor issue. But more than that, he was a professor at the International Management Institute, and he has worked with Venkatratnam. And when we were thinking about the release of the book, especially Shyam Sundar, he said that, can we get him? And we were in a fix because one, it was a very short notice. Second, who will approach? Who will approach Dr. Mishra? So reluctantly, I gave a call to him, I think day before yesterday or sometime. So it was very short notice. And I said, sir, this is the request we have. And he said, yes, I got a letter from Shyam Sundar also, but I have engagement in Janakpuri. Is it? Janakpuri. And Janakpuri is other part of the city. And in Delhi, driving or traveling is very easy. You can't move that fast. But he accepted, he said, I will try. And we are so glad that he is with us. But before I request him to release the book, maybe he would like to say something about Venkat Ratnam, and then we go on to the release of the book. Dr. Mishra ji, आइए.
Thank you, Professor Sinha, for giving me this wonderful opportunity. I would like to begin by quoting a soul-stirring couplet from P.B. Shelley's Ode to West Wind. We look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sweetest songs are those that tell us of the saddest thoughts. This is an occasion, not merely recollections of Dr. Venkat Ratnam in very warm, affable and sweet terms. It's also a very sad occasion, and particularly for me, because I had the opportunity and privilege of working with him for barely 9-10 months. It was a very brief but extremely eventful and memorable period. So when one's heart and minds are full, words turn out to be too poor a medium of expression of one's genuine feelings. And that is exactly the situation where I am placed, and I accepted this invitation with all the spontaneity that I could, despite the constraints of time and logistic support. Now let me share with you a few words about the outstanding qualities of this person, outstanding qualities of an outstanding personality. He was extremely warm and affable, a picture of humility with a lot of sincerity of purpose and courage of conviction, completely uncompromising with fundamentals and the non-negotiable, but always with a tone of sweetness and humility, remarkable energy and tenacity, coupled with rugged determination towards achievement of certain avowed goals, holder of total balance between pairs of opposites. And this is where we had the fundamental differences, because he was absolutely an uncompromising advocate of globalization, liberalization and privatization. And he was of the view that the LPG syndrome can be harnessed to very good, positive, proactive ends. I differed with him on the ground that not on conceptual terms, but on the modality of translating these concepts into concrete action, given the situation in which we are placed, which is a situation of total volatility and inflexibility. There are I would like to share with you two couplets which go to describe these qualities. One, when the rivers mingle with the ocean, a remarkable equilibrium is caused. Yatha nadinang bahavo ambuvega samudrameva bhimukha dravanti. Quoting from Bhagavad Gita, apuryamanang achala pratishthang samudrang apah pravisanti jadvat tadvat kamajang pravisanti sarbe sasanting apnoti nakamakami. He would be working almost unremittingly, day in and day out, for 18 to 20 hours a day, and yet could maintain that complete equilibrium and calmness without showing signs of any perturbation. So that is the first outstanding quality, that he had complete peace, serenity and equanimity of mind in the midst of all the turmoil that a head of a premier institute like International Management Institute could confront. The other one, that he was not really worried about anything. Once he was clear and convinced about a particular thing, he would like to pursue that with all the pursuit of excellence. And that is what the second couplet from Bhartruhari's Satak, Niti Satak, Nindantu Niti Nipuna Yadi Vastu Bantu, Lakshmi Samavisatu Gachatu Va Jatheshtang, Adviva Maranangastu Yugantareva, Nayat Pati Pravichalanti Padang Nadhira. Just few days before he passed away, he had cancer in the throat and he was at a terminal stage. We met at India International Center. He was not able to walk properly, he was walking with faltering steps, and just he wanted to convey something to me and whispered into my ears that we are going to open a branch of IMI at Bhubaneswar. Would you be in a position to associate your time and energy with us for this purpose? And those were the last words. Just 4 days after, that is on 10th of April, 16th of April 2010, he was no more. So whether you placate me or you reproach me, whether the goddess of wealth adorns all her blessings on me or not, whether death comes today or tomorrow, I will not swerve an inch from the path of justice, from the path of my conviction. So that was the man, and I really feel overwhelmed on this occasion when I recollect the sweet memories of that brief association, which will be indelible or indelibly imprinted in my mind for all time to come. Now, in deference to the request of Praveen Sinha, I would like to share with you a few words on this occasion. What could be the appropriate message from my side on this occasion, because we are in the midst of extremely difficult times, uncertain times, times where we are not sure of ourselves. As he had said, that the only thing that is permanent is change. Now change certainly is desirable provided change is associated with certain events or consequences which bring goodness or happiness to humanity. So what is the situation in which we are placed, and what could be the message on this occasion? I have just three messages. One is globalization and competitiveness, a few words on that. And second, labor reforms. Third, the type of problem, the challenge, the constraint which trade unions in India and outside are confronted with, and last, how to organize the unorganized. Now let me start with the first. I am an ardent believer, like Dr. Venkatratnam, with competitiveness which is associated with globalization. Having risen from very modest background and having topped in all the school and college examinations through unremitting hard work, I know what is the importance of competitiveness. Competitiveness basically implies that there is no sycophancy, there is no nepotism, there is no favoritism, and you rise to great heights by dint of your sheer hard work and your own merit. And if that could be the central message in competitiveness, then what is wrong with competitiveness which is associated with the globalization? But competitiveness, to be successful, we need competition amongst the equals and not between a David and a Goliath. This is one. Second, there must be adequate planning and preparation before the competitors enter the rings. Third, there must be a level playing field with a reference to just, fair, honest, impartial, and non-partisan, with total transparency and accountability. If not, then competitiveness associated with globalization would turn out to be something very loose, and certainly will not produce the desired results, far less the even-handed justice. Now let me illustrate this point quickly further. Globalization permits import of technology from abroad. Invariably, such technology is fraught with occupational risks and hazards. You have all heard about the great tragedy which struck Bhopal city on 2nd December 1984. 2,500 people died instantaneously on the spot, and thousands have been maimed and crippled for life. Even today they are struggling. Why did it happen? Because we allowed a pesticide plant of the United Carbide Corporation to be set up in the midst of the densest locality near the bus stand, near the railway station, which was full of human settlements, without being sure of the technology that this plant was importing. The technology, there was no risk sharing and risk communication either with the workers or with the trade unions. So therefore, on that fateful day, 2nd December 1984, when water got into the tank containing this deadly gas, methyl isocyanate, there was a terrible reaction, and that reaction caused this tragedy. And this is happening and is likely to happen until and unless we have been able to ensure total risk sharing and risk communication between the technology which we are importing, which is fraught with occupational risks and hazards, and the workers and the trade unions at the other end. I was a member secretary of BIFR for about a year. I have handled large number of cases of mergers, amalgamations, acquisitions of companies outside India with companies inside India. Some are viable, some are not so viable, some are revivable, that is those which are sick, some of them are revivable, but all are not. But the workers and the trade unions sitting at the other end of the table have absolutely no access to the information as to what are these units with whom merger is going to take place with an Indian company, because all the cards have not been laid on the table. If all the cards are not laid on the table, there is no transparency in information sharing. You may have a Right to Information Act, but then you can't apply that information when total sharing of information is not taking place. So therefore, there must be total candor and total transparency in information sharing process to make competitiveness meaningful. Now, labor reforms. Mr. Sharma has waxed eloquent. I think the last speaker in the session preceding this, Piyush Sharmaji, I know him for many years, and there are points of agreement, there are points of disagreement. On the occasion of completion of 25 years of the bold and valiant initiative which was taken by Professor Manmohan Singh, our former finance and prime minister, I had the occasion to go through series of interviews published by Indian Express. It's still continuing. I think today it is N.K. Singh's, perhaps it has appeared. Professor Manmohan Singh, Mantek Singh Ahluwalia, Arun Sauri, Rakesh Mohan, Yaga Venugopal Reddy, Shankar Acharya, Professor Deepak Nair. So these are the interviews I have. Now these interviews provide tremendous insight into the state of the economy prior to July 1991, when the reforms process was launched by Professor Manmohan Singh, the pith and substance of the measures taken, what would have happened if the measures were not taken, the fallouts of the reform process, and the tasks mandated and completed, and the unfinished tasks and challenges for the future. While I commend both the interviewer as well as the interviewees for the inimitable piece of economic history of India, I would like to ask a couple of questions, because I am a bit intrigued by some of their statements that everything possible was attempted but nothing substantial in the field of labor reforms. So what exactly they have in their mind, they have not spelled out very clearly in these interviews, that this is an area which remained untraded. Untraded because despite best of intentions and initiatives, they could not establish any agreement or consensus, far less any consensus amongst the partners of the industry whose interests according to them are irreconcilable. But it has not been spelled out very clearly as to what exactly they had in your mind, in their mind. Do labor reforms mean repeal of some of the existing laws? Do labor reforms tantamount to amendment of a few provisions which we are seeing as stumbling blocks or irritants? Do they mean combination of a few laws under appropriate heads, as the task force which has been constituted by the Ministry of Labour is currently attempting to do, like industrial relations, social security, wages, health, safety and welfare? Do they mean enhancing the employment strength criterion and income criterion for the purpose of coverage of establishments under a particular law? Do they imply simplification and rationalization, forms and procedures? Do they envisage dispensing with the system of inspection and compliance on the ground that Inspector Raj has brought havoc to this country? Has this issue been placed as a substantive item ever in the agenda for a tripartite fora like Standing Labour Committee and Indian Labour Conference? Perhaps not. The employers and their organizations have all along contended that labour laws in India have overprotected labour, and that's what Piyush Sharmaji also mentioned. They have neither done any good to employers nor to the workers. It should be noted, and I would like to say with one energy, one conscience and one force, that denial of protection will be as bad as overprotection. Because denial of protection will have certain repercussions on the health, safety and well-being, as also morale and motivation of workers, like inferior conditions of work. In such inferior conditions which would conceal the true nature of employment relationship, which also Piyush Sharmaji mentioned when he spoke of SAM contracts or SAM contractual relationship. They would bring down the level of wages and income. Depressed wages would result in reduced consumption, and reduced consumption would produce a recessionary effect on the economy. And low income would lead to poverty, poverty to child labor, and child labor to crippling of human resource. Inferior conditions of work would adversely affect the health and psyche of workers, will give rise to a spot in the number of accidents which are never reported in India, and eventually workers would lose interest in and commitment to the enterprise. So therefore, let us not attempt striking a balance between overprotection and denial of protection. Protection, to the extent it is irreducible, barest minimum, has to be provided, because protection is a form of social defense for those people like the poor, the deprived, the disadvantaged, the dispossessed, like landless agricultural laborers, sharecroppers, rural artisans, or collectors of minor forest produce, the forest labor. For them, protection is absolutely essential. And that protection, without that protection, they would be nowhere. They would be in a twilight zone of development, and remaining in a twilight zone of development is not certainly desirable. Besides, if we unilaterally and arbitrarily repeal certain laws, what will happen? India today, till date, it is one of the oldest founding members of the ILO, amongst the 10 countries of chief industrial importance. It is a non-elective member, it is a permanent member of the governing body of the ILO. So this will adversely affect India's image, because India has ratified over 40 ILO conventions. It has ratified large number of other UN treaties, including the Convention on the Rights of the Children, and India is a permanent non-elective and founding member of the ILO. So the plight and predicament of workers in the most distressed category would go from bad to worse, and there will be no wherewithal for social, legal, economic and psychological protection. So therefore, let us not advocate a line of argument that laws have become archaic merely on account of age. Even today we have 3 laws on the statute book which have not become archaic. One is the Employees Compensation Act, the oldest legislation which was enacted in colonial India in 1923. The second one, Trade Union Act 1926. There are ambiguities, contradictions, inadequacies and shortcomings, but certainly it's an important piece of protection, labor protection. And the third, Payment of Wages Act 1936. So therefore a law does not become archaic merely on account of age. It becomes archaic only if it has outlived the need of the times, the ethos and spirit of the times. I don't think either of these 3 laws, they have come to that position. We have yet another law called Child Labor Pledging Act, Pledging of Child Labor Act. Parents cannot pledge the services or mortgage the services of children to contractors and subcontractors. That is prohibited under a law of 1933, which is still on the statute book. Every law is the product of a particular point of time. It has been enacted either with reference to a particular provision of the Constitution, or with reference to a particular provision in the international treaty like the ILO Convention and Recommendation or any other UN treaty, or a direction of the Supreme Court. Like the Contract Labor Regulation Abolition Act was enacted because there was a judgment of the Supreme Court in 1959 in Standard Vacuum's case. We have large number of such legislations which have been enacted in deference to the directions of the Supreme Court. So therefore, let us not adopt an extremist line of repealing laws merely because they have outlived their utility for this particular age, or they have become old enough. That does not mean that irritants and stumbling blocks should not be removed. By all means, there are large number of ambiguities and contradictions in number of laws, and all these need to be removed by way of suitable amendments. As far as industrial relations are concerned, we have a very serious problem with regard to trade unions, because they are losing membership, they are losing in terms of density, they are losing in terms of effective collective bargaining rights which they enjoyed so long, and they have remained confined only to the organized sector, which is also declining. In percentage terms, it may be barely 5 to 6%, and about 93 to 94% will be in the unorganized sector. So therefore it is time that we need to ponder over as to what could be the new role of trade unions, because they can't certainly live with the old role which they have been playing so far. One important role which we can think of is transforming society economically. Second could be role in mobilizing and organizing the contract labor, casual labor, temporary and part-time workers in the informal sector. Third, taking a lead in terms of skill formation and skill upgradation, so that there could be greater transition from the informal sector to the formal sector. And fourth, launching, assuming leadership for launching powerful campaigns against feticide, infanticide, all types of differentiation, segmentation, discrimination against women, or any other form of discrimination, and such other social evils like bonded labor, child labor, trafficking of girls and women, commercial sexual exploitation, child sex abuse, and all that. Even the laws have been enacted in most of these areas, but so far we have not succeeded in launching a countrywide campaign for conscientization of large cross sections of the civil society that what we have been doing so far is not desirable, and therefore let us stop doing what we have been doing, like making our own succeeding generation victims of exploitation, the children. So these are some of the new roles, I think, which we need to envision for trade unions in place of the traditional role of bargaining for certain rights which have been granted either by the constitution or the laws of the land. But this, they need to think and reflect and critically analyze as to whether they can really assume these roles. And there must be total unanimity also amongst the trade unions as to whether they need to adopt a path which is non-traditional or unorthodox and non-conservative. Now coming to the organizing the unorganized, this is one area. I think this has been beautifully reflected in the book. This is one chapter which I read with great interest. This is chapter 7. The name of the author is Peng Sul An. It's a extremely well written chapter where the author comes to the conclusion that organization of the unorganized does not mean only formation of trade unions. And he has given beautiful illustrations, the methods and tactics used in organizing the informal workers in India. There could be a cooperative model, there could be a study circle model, there could be a self-help group model, there could be a personal contact and welfare aid model, there could be a hierarchical network model, there could be a friendship house model, there could be a skill development model, and there could be information technology training model and social mobilizing model. An extremely well written piece which should provide a lot of inspiration and motivation to the trade unions, and in particular those who want to work in this area of mobilizing and organizing the unorganized, the landless agricultural laborers, the sharecroppers, the rural artisans, the fisher women and men, the forest workers, the salt manufacturing workers, the brick kiln workers, the stone quarry workers, the loaders and unloaders, the hand cart drivers, the scavengers, the sewer workers, building and other construction workers, collectors of minor agricultural and forest produce, and so on. In terms of number, it is formidable, maybe around 450 million. They are scattered and fragmented. There is absolutely no protection whatsoever. I am saying this on the basis of my own experience, both as Labour Commissioner Odisha, as Director General Labour Welfare in Government of India, as Union Labour Secretary, as Director General National Literacy Mission, and also as Director General of CAPART. Across the length and breadth of the country, wherever I have gone, I have seen the plight and predicament of these workers. Bamboo workers who are working for felling bamboos, because that is the principal raw material for paper mills. The axe falls on their legs, injury is caused, this accident will never be reported, there is no first aid, they will develop sepsis, the sepsis will turn into gangrene, and eventually either it has to be amputated or they will die, and they will die unseen, unknown, unsung, in complete obscurity. This is just one. Collectors of minor forest and agricultural and forest produce. In forests of Sonbhadra I have seen, those who go for collection of this, you see they are infected by insect bites, the snake bites, enormous risks, occupational risks and hazards which confront their lives. And the minor produce which they collect, they can't process it themselves. They have no economic wherewithal. So they will be forced to sell it to non-functional or dysfunctional middlemen who will be processing them, selling them at a formidably high price in the market. So how long and how far this process should continue? What Karl Marx had written in Das Kapital, the theory of surplus value, that you may be working much longer than 8 hours, but then you don't appropriate the value or price of that labor to your advantage in any way, because it is never remunerated, it's never computed. Just like women who are working at home, at school, at the workshop or outside, I don't think we have succeeded as yet, despite ILO Convention number 100 and 111, and despite India ratifying that convention, we have not succeeded in designing a mechanism by which we will be able to compute the contribution.
Now may I request the editor to respond and tell us something about the book.
Thanks, Praveen. Dr. L.D. Mishra, thank you, sir, for agreeing to release and give a discourse on the current contemporary challenges that the industrial relations system and labor market faces. I have prepared a small text which I will read because I do not trust myself to speak extempore. It's indeed a pleasure and an intense source of personal satisfaction that I'm here to receive the first copy of the book edited by me in memory of late Professor C.S. Venkatratnam from the hands of an erudite scholar and a competent administrator, Dr. L.D. Mishra. I consider it as a matter of divine design and blessings that Venkataratnam came into my life sometime during the 1990s. It's a curious story and I shall relate it very briefly. I wrote an article on internal emergency and industrial relations and sent it to the Economic and Political Weekly, which was rejected twice for reasons other than academics. And then I sent it to the Indian Journal of Labor Economics. Professor Alex Sharma, who was to be here, but for owing to extremely unavoidable reasons, he is not with us. He saw some merit in this article and asked me to present it in the ensuing Indian Society of Labor Economics Conference in 1996. And therein, I met with Venkataratnam. He greatly appreciated that article. In fact, he held that article to be one of my best. And thus began our professional and then personal relationship. My gratitude are to those who are responsible for rejecting my article and to Professor Alex Sharma for accepting it. And Venkataratnam interfaced me with ILO when Merlin Ruda was a social dialogue specialist. She was a very special person in my life. I wrote my first book entitled Benchmarking Industrial Relations and Labor Market. The idea of the book was given by Professor Venkataratnam and he gave me the freedom to publish it. Anecdotes such as this are plenty in our relationship. And he was very affectionate towards me. And I just wish to say, I have written a tribute to Professor Venkataratnam in Economic and Political Weekly, which was published in 2010, and that has been reprinted in the volume. And I greatly enjoyed my interactions with him. He was a great moral and intellectual force. As Ralph Waldo Emerson would say, observed, nature seems to exist for the excellent. The world is upheld by the veracity of good men. They make the earth wholesome. I have been specially lucky, despite my poor and inadequate endowments, to have met with and enjoyed the affections of several significant and great people in my life. They grace my otherwise uneventful life. I decided that my remaining life should be celebrated in their memory. It is with this intention that I initiated the volume in memory of Venkataratnam. I cannot recount the difficulties, obstacles, ordeals that the editor, Mr. Dhruv Narayan, he was to be here, again owing to very unavoidable reason he's not here. This journey of publishing this book took us nearly 2.5 years. Long journey, indeed it was. The difficulties and everything, I just cannot say deaths, problems, crises, loss of the hard disk, the printer's machine breaking, editor's wife in the hospital in the last 1 week, and so on and so forth. Shall I say, I attribute all these misfortunes to my astrological positioning, which ill luck overpowered the collective benevolent force of the contributors and the editor and his entire team. There cannot be a rational explanation for the delays that plagued this blessed project. Sorry for mentioning astrological aspects such as this, even in jest, in the gathering of this sort. But I shall persist, holding the hand of faith and grace in my endeavor to pay gratitude to the great people who graced my life, for I have many a debts to repay. The reasons for mentioning the delay are to strongly state with immense gratitude that the contributors to the book, save one, have stayed with me through and through 2.5 years and displayed extraordinary patience in putting up with the inordinate delays and extended promises. I am grateful to all the contributors for this. The editor is as good as the contributors, and the contributors excel in their spheres, and this is the good news for the readers. And of course, I am thankful to Dr. Praveen Sinha for writing the foreword to this book and for organizing this excellent book release function. Thank you, Praveen. Venkatratnam, in fact, had a great regard for him, and this function could not have been organized by any person other than Dr. Praveen Sinha. This volume seeks to study diverse issues such as the nature of the industrial relations system, trade unions, judiciary, contract labor system, managerial strategies, evolution of industrial relations in a multinational company, organization of home-based workers, trade union revival, politics of labor law reforms, larger issues like second industrial divide and so on. The volume is timely in these days of labor policy reform debates, about which Dr. Mishra had spoken adequately, eloquently, and suitably so. This is the uniqueness of the volume, and hopefully it does justice to the width and diversity of Venkatratnam's works. Of course, I regret that I could not get the multi-stakeholder perspective which Professor Venkatratnam valued a lot. I must thank the editor, Danish Books, for having persisted despite all odds and eventually bringing out this volume. I am thankful to all those present here, and personally so to the dignitaries who have agreed to speak at a last moment notice, and I am sure their presence here is entirely due to the regard that they have had for Professor Venkatratnam, and this book release function becomes more memorable to me because of the presence of these people and for the kind words that they spoke of Professor Venkatratnam, who is one of my father figures. I am sorry that Professor Chandra Venkatratnam could not be present here owing to the sudden demise of the mother of Professor Venkatratnam. However, she has conveyed her best wishes and indeed added that this function enjoys the blessings of the departed soul, that is Venkatratnam's mother. I must thank FES, Mr. Patrick, and Dr. Praveen Sinha, and the Indian Industrial Relations Association for having accommodated this function in a short notice in a seminar on decent work, which was very dear to Professor Venkatratnam's intellectual outlook. This is a double pleasure for both me and to Professor Venkatratnam. As Dr. Chandra Venkatratnam observed, Dr. Venkatratnam must be there above in the heavens, smiling and being sweet and angelic and blessing this project. I'm sure the readers would have a good time reading this book because it covers quite a few important contemporary themes. The book will be available in the course of next week, and personal emails from the editor, Mr. Dhruv Narayan, will go to all those who are present here, and they could buy it at the discounted price. And I do not want to delay you, but few important people who are very close to Professor Venkatratnam abroad have sent messages, and I would like to take a very short time reading these short messages. Professor Greg Bamber, Professor, Director, Master of HRM and Graduate Diploma in HRM, Co-Director, Australian Consortium for Research and Employment and Work, Monash Business School, Monash University, Melbourne. I quote, "Congratulations on the release of the book in the memory of late Venkat. We are very sorry that he is no longer with us. I much enjoyed visiting him and Professor Chandra Venkatratnam in India and interacting with them in various other countries as we participated in international conferences. We all miss him, and we have greatly benefited from his profound insights into our mutual fields of labor and employment relations. We dedicated to him the 5th edition of our book, International and Comparative Employment Relations, which he contributed to. With very kind regards to Professor Chandra Venkatratnam and to your good self, that is me." Then Professor Russell Lansbury, Emeritus Professor, the University of Sydney Business School, University of Sydney. "Congratulations on publishing the volume in honor of Professor Venkatratnam. I am sure that his family and colleagues will be very grateful to you for undertaking this project. I am honored to have met and had very interesting discussions with late Professor Venkatratnam and was saddened by his passing." Professor Sarosh Kuruvilla, Professor of Industrial Relations, Cornell University. He is also visiting professor of employment relations and organizational behavior at the London School of Economics. I had a high regard for Venkat. Our association goes back many years, and in the time that I knew him, there was no one more knowledgeable or more passionate about industrial relations in India. He was my go-to person for all things connected with Indian IR, and he was a resource to many generations, to scholars and students. I have learnt much through our association, and I think Venkat will not only be remembered for his lasting contribution to Indian industrial relations, but also as a committed teacher of students. And the final message is from the President, ILERA, International Labor and Employment Relations, Dr. Dong Won Kim. I would like to pass on the message in memory of Professor Venkataratnam. In life, he was a great scholar who had unmeasurable insight in Indian labor relations. He not only possessed excellency in his academic work, but he also earned his respect from his junior colleagues with his fine nature as a person. I, as well, have fond memories with him from various ILERA congresses. His sudden passing away some years ago was a shock and a grief to all of us. The seminar and the function in memory of Professor Ratnam is truly a meaningful event. I feel regretful that I cannot attend the seminar at this time. It would have been an honor to show my respect at the event in person. I believe that this function will be a stepping stone to continuous advancement in the academic field of labor relations in India. Once again, I pay my condolences to late Professor Venkataratnam and pay my respect to him as the president of ILERA. Unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being patient with the journey of this function, and I'm happy that two of the contributors, Dr. Anamitra Rai Chaudhary, Assistant Professor JNU, please sir, and Ms. Salini Sinha, Vigo, both the contributors are here. I thank them. Other contributors could not be here for various reasons, and I once again thank FES and IRA for holding this function. I thank Dr. Mishra for his eloquent address, and I bow with reverence to the departed soul, Professor Venkataratnam, and I hope this volume does well for two reasons: for the sake of the contributors and for the sake of, in memory of Professor Venkataratnam. Thank you very much.
Okay. Heavy. I think we go for tea. I formally thank you for your presence, for being part of this this book release function, and I also thank all the speakers for that, and may I invite you for a cup of tea before we go to our respective. Thank you very much.